I'm going to mix the colors for the land now. So I do want to do a very bright green. So I'm just mixing what's on my brush with some yellow. And that is the highlight that is on the grass where the sun is shining through. It's quite bright. So I'm going to put that on. And then I have the darker grass. Let's get some water on this palette. And I'm using cobalt. And then I'm going to add some ultramarine. I think the ultramarine is actually here. Lots of ultramarine. Okay. I might add a tiny bit of orange. More ultramarine. Trying to get a nice green for the grass. I ran out of space on my phone, so I was recording this part, the lawn area that we were doing, and I ran out of space, so the video stopped. Basically what I did is I put the green, the light green on first, which I just mixed with cobalt and lemon yellow. And then I had a medium green, which was mixed with a lot of different colors, just starting with cobalt and yellow though, and then I added a bit of orange, etc. That's why it has this olivey color. And then I mixed a dark green, which was neutral tint, ultramarine, and then lemon yellow, and quite a dark green. So that's been applied, and then I covered the top of the painting and I splattered orange on it, and that's pretty much what I've ended up with here. So our next step is to paint in the trees, and we will proceed with that. For our trees, we're going to use a very dark brown color. So I'm going to start with burnt sienna, pick up whatever's in my palette here, and I'm going to add ultramarine to that. I want a lighter side of the tree, and then I want a darker side. So I'm going to do two different mixes here. This is just the ultramarine I'm adding. A bit more water here. So this is my lighter mix. A bit more ultramarine. Okay, so that's lighter. And then this is my darker. So in the dark, I'm going to be adding neutral tint, burnt sienna, ultramarine, maybe some cobalt because I just want it to have a bluer color. Add some cobalt, neutral tint, back to some burnt sienna, more water. Okay, so this is a thicker mixture as well. That one there is pretty watery, but this one is staying fairly thick on the palette. So that's a nice dark brown, chocolatey color. And I'm going to work from the left to the right so that I don't get my hands into it. You can use your reference photo to look at shapes of trees and so on. My paper is a little bit bigger, so my trees are extended further over here. And I'm just going to start with the light and put the tree in with the light. Make it a bit thicker. Okay, and then it's going to go up through these sky holes. Okay, and I could have one coming out through this sky hole. Maybe it's going down there. So that's all very light. And then I'm going to take the dark and I'm going to put the dark on this side of the tree. And just for now at the bottom, I'm just going to kind of wipe it around. And make sure your trunk and tree is wide enough at the bottom. And obviously it gets narrower as you go to the top. And you can also choose to put some branches in areas where it doesn't really look like it's a sky hole, but maybe where the yellow is. It might be showing more through in the yellow as well. And then it's a good idea to have some branches coming off the trunk as well. Don't make them too even. So if you have, one coming this way, just make weird shapes, I guess is what the best way to describe it. And if a trunk comes down, it's a bit thicker where it actually comes down at first. Okay, so that's our first tree. Very simple. These branches are skinnier as you progress through. Okay, so next tree. My brush is a bit wet, so I'm just going to dab off a tiny bit. This tree is very skinny. I'll wipe out the trunk a bit. And I'm going to do it a bit in the dark because it's not a very wide tree. It's a young sapling, I guess. So I'm going to do thin lines. You could even use a skinny brush for this if that works for you. Okay, and try not to do all the lines out of 45. We have this tendency to try to repeat patterns. So some should be off, kind of weird shaped. I find sometimes it helps to jerk. So paint a little bit and then do that. So stop and then paint. As they're not curved. Most tree branches, believe it or not, are straight. But it's just that they go off in different directions. So here, see what I'm doing? I'm kind of going off. Okay, so that's that tree. I'm going to make it a bit darker. So it's a very skinny tree. Okay, and then there's another one. I think it might be too skinny, but we'll see how we go. Okay, so this is the dark. I need to add some light. Lost my cloth again. So let's do our light on this side. The light is a bit too weak here because it's not getting any coverage. So I'm just going to thicken this up a little bit. You'll notice it's not really covering the green of the lawn. And I need to have it do that. Okay. This one should be a bit thicker. This one should be thicker. I'm just going to speed up the filming. Obviously on YouTube you can slow it down if you want to at any part, but it makes this video go much faster. I've decided we need some spatter in the trees. So I'm just gonna start with the yellow and then work through our colors. To me, I just think it needs it. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. Okay, now some orange. Well, make sure it's pretty watery though. You don't want a whole. Okay, let's try that. Yeah, I think it does help a little bit to have a little bit of spatter. And then the other thing you can do is take a fan brush and do the same thing. The benefit of this is it's a bit more directed. A few of these spots are just not as clear as I would like. And makes it look a little bit more leaf-like. Okay, got some Queen Rose. Don't overdo it though. You do want the whole watercolor effect to show through. Not quite as dark as I would like, so I remix my dark, and I'm just going to go to each tree and darken it a bit. So that's the dark, and now we're going to add our shadow color, which should have a bit of green in it. If yours isn't, whoops. So it should be like a greeny blue. So mine is not greeny at this point. Add some cobalt, and I'm going to add ultramarine. I want the shadow to be a very dark color as well. So I'm adding some neutral tint, more cobalt, more ultramarine. So that's a good color. That looks like it. So this, what you should do is you should have your brush that you're going to apply your shadow with, and then a clean brush to just get rid of some of the extra lines. So we're going to start on the left hand side, and we're going to work our way through, and we're going to follow the same shadow line. So I'm going to paint up the tree a bit, and then do the shadow line, paint up the tree a bit. Now this one's a bit tricky because I don't want to lose the light spot there, but I do have to have it run right into that. Okay, make sure you've got lots of water on your brush. Okay. And then these ones, again, this one's a tricky one. Okay, so we've created our shadow, but there is the shadow of the tree branches as well. So we need to put that in. Okay. And anywhere where you kind of messed up, you can always just put some more branches, shadows from the branches in there. Assuming that there's some things over there. And then we want to soften out the edges of some of these just by going in with a damp brush and just softening that up. In this corner, it should be very dark. Make sure you get lots of shadow in that part. Okay. And then I think it helps to have a fair amount of shadow here as well. Okay. Some of you have asked, how do I get the effect of this painting that I brought in? And I'm going to show you that on another one that I did, which is, so as I mentioned, the way to achieve this is a bit of spray bottle as well as a lot of dibby dabbing. So for spray bottle, the best kind is the ones with the adjustable nozzle. I think you can see that. And what you want is you want to be, I don't know, 12 inches away or something like that. See how it separates into tiny little dots? I don't know if you can see that. Now you can. And if you adjust these back and forth, you're either going to get a lot of dots, and I'm backing up, or if you turn it out, then you're going to get a big spray. So if you want a lot of dots, you tighten it up, not too tight, and then you get a lot of dots. And the other thing you do is you do it from a distance. That is essentially what you want to achieve, is have a nozzle spray bottle that basically you spray, and you can do this in sections the same way we did in class. So I'm going to spray, and now I've got a wet surface in that area. I sprayed that area, and I'm just checking so I can see it's got some nice drops in there. Grab my brushes, and then I'm going to start with darker colors because we got a lot of yellow in the background. And we'll just, I would say maybe a medium brush. And then let's start just with our orange. We'll mix these as we go. Some water on the palette. Let's start with the orange. And I'm kind of bending down to see where the dots are. And it's showing me they're spreading out where the water is. Now, if they're not going anywhere, you just have to do it again. But they will go. I'm adding some red. Okay. And then I'll go back to the lemon yellow because I want to see what happens if I put the lemon yellow right in the middle of these. Yeah, that's not so bad. And I'm working in a small area initially. I'm not going across the entire painting. I'm just working where I think it's wet enough. And when I look, it's wet enough in these three areas, but it's not as wet at the top in this area or over here. It's quite wet here. Okay, and then I'm going to go back to the yellow as well because I think that helps a bit to put some yellow in between Oops. And then some red. This one looks a little dry. Oh, it's not that dry. And let's see if it's wet enough down there. It's got a bit of wetness in it. Okay. And then I'm going to add some burnt sienna, especially around the tree. There I can tell it's not wet enough because nothing is spreading. Have a look again. And then let's just do this top corner. The other thing you can do is you can just cover where you don't want to do it. Okay. I want to keep this green. I like the green in there. Maybe some burnt sienna up in this area. Yeah, there's still lots of drops and water droplets there. Go back to my red. And I could probably use a smaller brush. This brush might be a bit big for what we're doing, so you could switch to a smaller brush if you like. Let's try that. I'm gonna go back into my yellow here because this is high up in the tree. With my yellow, I'm just making sure my paint is nice and clean every time that I go into it, or my brush, I mean. Get some yellow in there, and I guess I'll pick up some gamboge as well. Let's put that down here. Move this over here for now. Or actually, we'll put it over there. Okay, pick up some gamboge for these spots. Okay, maybe up here. And now it does look more colorful because you're dotting in a lot more color. This to me looks a little bit too red up here, so what you could do is take your cloth or even just a damp brush, wipe it off on the brush, and then you can pick up some of that and deposit it somewhere else if you like. Okay. All right. We did those two sections. I'm having a look. It's not really that wet over this part at all. I do see an opportunity to put some more dots down here. And I might put a bit more burnt sienna in this area. Just at the top where these branches are. Moving on. And while we're here, I guess we could mix some green. So let me do that. I've got my cobalt here. So, and this time I'm going to cover this whole area. Lift up. I'm, I don't know, 8 inches, 10 inches off the paper. Okay, go back through my routine. Oh, I just got, all right, back again. So it's still got some really nice dots on it. I can see that. Put this aside here too. I'm gonna start with my lemon yellow or Hansa yellow. And I'm just looking for spots where there's some dots, or some water droplets, I should say. Because when I drop it in there, then they're going to spread out a little bit. Let's go in with our orange. A little bit orange over here. Some of these are kind of dry, but I think it will do the trick. And here I'm just making it look like individual leaves are coming down. Okay, so orange there. Maybe some red in this area. Just going around. red. The red always seems very pronounced. Put some gamboge in over here and there. Gamboge here. And if it's running too much, try not to hit the other paint, because it's just going to make that paint run a lot more. So I'm now avoiding the areas where I put the red. Okay, and I might add a bit of burnt sienna over here too. I think it would be fine if this was a darker part of the tree. Now that's not blending together at all, really. So I think I'll just go back with gamboge and see if I can get some movement by touching the red, because the red doesn't seem to want to go anywhere. It's not bad. See, this red here is very pronounced. Do some of that red up in here. I might mix red with gamboge. See if I can dull it down a tiny bit. Okay, to me it looks too dotty. It is quite wet, so I don't really want to spray it anymore. What I might do is just go to the areas where it looks like it's hard-edged and just add plain water into that, because I want it to look more like it does over there. And then again, I'm going to spray the tops here. There's a little bit of green here and there too, so I'll just put that in here and here, because that's still kind of damp. And there, up in here, orange up in this spot here. And a bit of red just towards the bottom here. Okay, it's looking okay. Before we leave that part, because we're halfway through our painting, okay, orange here. I'm trying to leave as much yellow as I can. So I think you don't really want to cover all the yellow. Okay, and here I can put a bit of burnt sienna as well. Okay, some burnt sienna here. Maybe a little bit up in here. Okay. It also helps emphasize the sky holes, the burnt sienna, because it's darker. Oh, making sure you can see all this. Okay, and then put a little bit of gamboge down into there. Maybe a tiny bit of red. A bit of red in these spots too. Okay, that's fine. So moving on. I'm going to add, let's check. Yeah, we're not wet enough across. So let's just give it another spritz. High up. Okay, it's good. with our lemon yellow, which is almost gamboge right now. I'll leave all this yellow up here because it's quite nice. When you're covering with yellow, it doesn't really make too much change to the underlying paint. It does practically nothing for it. Okay, let's try some orange. Kind of following the background as well. If I see orange in the background, these are the areas where I'm going to put the dots. I don't see too much red in the background. There's hardly any red actually that I've put in so far. I put a lot of red there and a lot of red here, which could use a tiny bit more red, I think. If it's still damp, you're going to be okay, but if it's not, you're just going to create a hard surface. Some red up here. Okay, and I think I need a little bit of green in this one as well, right in here. Okay, not bad, getting there. And then we'll head over here. In order for the yellows to look brighter, the reds have to be darker. So if you see some bright yellow that's in this area, just surround it with dark colors and then it will really show up. My red is kind of watery, so it's not really coming out too dark. Okay. And there's kind of clumps of color. If you blend all the colors together, then they're just going to look kind of washed out. But if you pick a clump and say, okay, this clump is going to be yellow, then you do that one yellow. And it looks like that's kind of shining through. Okay, and then let's do some orange over here. This might be too dry. Yeah, I can tell right away. At least that spot is dry. And then we need some burnt sienna over here. Maybe over here. There. Some green there as well, because there seems to be a fair amount of green around that area. If you don't like an area, you can always go in and just make it darker. So I don't like this area because it is dry compared to the other areas. So I just ended up creating a layer on top versus this area here has a much nicer texture. So I'm just trying to make a pattern throughout it that distracts from the dots, I guess. Okay, and notice I'm holding my brush straight up in order to do the dots. I want it to deposit the paint and then leave. Okay, it's not bad. We'll do a bit more gamboge over in here. And to me, I think it's all right. I think the objective is met. It has different patterns throughout. The other thing you can do, as I mentioned earlier, is you can do some splattering. And start on the left-hand side, just add your gamut of colors again. Okay. Go to the orange. Move to the red. Move to the burnt sienna. Oh, wrong one. Okay, and then let's do that on the right. We'll start on the right with the burnt sienna. And go into the red. And go into our orange. Put a bit more orange there. And that's kind of how you do it. I hope that helps. And since we missed the part where I did the lawn, I can do that here if you like as well. All right, so the way we start with the lawn is I'm going to do the green first. I mixed a light, lemony yellow green, and I'm going to put that down on the lawn. Okay, and this is also going to be providing some brightness in between the trees. Okay, so that, I'm just putting that in. Okay. And then the next thing that we're going to do is put some more orange in there. It will blend with that green. And we can use our spray bottle again if we want. Let's just go like that. And then I want to cover and splatter. But actually, before I do that, why don't I put my dark green in, which is very important. So I've mixed up a neutral tint, ultramarine or cobalt, and then a yellow. And that's my darker green, but I want to make this pretty dark, so I'm just adding more color into it. More ultramarine. And right now it has a brown tinge, so I want it to have a green tinge. So I need to give it a bit of yellow. And I need to give it a bit more ultramarine. Okay, that's not too bad. I'm gonna try, I've got a green in my palette that ooh, wow, look at that. Now that is green. Too green for our situation, but we could use a little bit of that. Let's put some of that in here. And then add some neutral tint, ultramarine. Okay, so we have what we need. And in order to make the dark green, I'm just going through, sometimes leaving gaps of a dry brush effect. Over here I could either have more bright green, which I might do in this case, and then I'm going to add some of this very greeny green. I'm not worried about the trees. If they go too light, I can always go over top of them one more time. Okay, so basically that creates a texture for me. And then I take my orange and I want to drop in some leaves here and there. Cover your water though. Okay, so that brings the leaves in. And now I'll have to wait for that to dry a bit in order to do the shadows. But that's essentially it. Just check your lines, make sure you don't have too many weird things happening in there. Add some more of this green in, especially in this corner. I think it needs it. I could add a bit of yellow in if I want some of this to be lighter here. We did kind of say that you wanted, you know, streaks of light coming down through here, so I can wipe them out and then just add some yellow on top of that, and that might do the trick. Maybe a streak of light here. Let's make it the angle the same as the other one. Okay. All right. So, and this here looks a little weird, so we'll just get that in. I could probably spatter some water too, just to give it some texture. Maybe I'll do a watery orange again. And maybe do a watery yellow. Why not? Yeah, it really helps to add some texture to the foreground. Okay, let it dry, and then we'll do the shadows. Before I start the shadows, I'm just going to darken the trees, because looking at them now, they look a little washed out, probably from the last coat we did, but also they're really not that dark, and if you want them to pop, it's best to get them very dark. So I'm going to start on this side first. Actually, I might just turn it around because the top is drier than the bottom. So I'm just going to darken all these trees. Just the trunks. I'm not so much worried about the branches, although I'll probably do a few as I go. Okay, probably should have done it this way. And I am going to go on and put some more paint on the bottom of the trunks. But I'm putting some on now as I do it. Okay. This one here. Now some of these are going to have light on them, but I'm just going to put this paint in first. And then if we want to put the light in, we can do that. Okay, this one is so straight. This probably is a good one to have some light in. Okay, this one. Keep going. This one is also a good one to have some light in. So I think I will do that for this one. Maybe a fair amount. Okay. And if there's any spots in the trees that you think don't look quite right, you could also touch those up right now. We already did this part in the prior painting. I'm just going to speed it up so that you don't have to go through it again. Thanks.